My big idea for today is that tax rates in India are too damn high. Okay, let's go piece by piece. We'll start at personal income tax. The peak rate in personal income tax is about 39%. And this is really way out of line compared to typical EM values like 25%. Okay, so I feel like we are about 15 percentage points away from a sensible level of personal income tax, one that is not too different from what the median EM has chosen. And this has consequences. It shapes the decisions of people about whether to locate in India, whether to obtain an income in India, and also the decisions of people on tax evasion. Okay, so that is the first problem, which is the personal income tax. The second thing is customs duties. The customs duties in India are just way too high. In a good EM like Vietnam, the customs duty is about 4%. In India, there are seldom any goods which have a customs duty of about 4%. I'm not counting GST on imports, that's distinct. We'll come to that. I'm just on customs. Customs duties in India are unconscionably high. They damage India's competitiveness because it's difficult to produce in India when raw materials are priced at these high customs duty rates. But for right now, I want to dwell on the experience of one individual in the country where you start at a peak rate on income of 39%, and then the purchases that are made are expensive because customs duties are high. Okay. The third piece is the GST. The typical Indian GST rate is about 18%. um, Arvind Modi, Vijay Kelkar, and I have been writing about the crisis on the tax pass through. That the whole idea of the GST is that input tax credits should flow. And many times in India, they don't flow, in which case the effective tax burden is much higher because it's a cascading tax that you're taxing many stages of production. So that's the third whammy, that you earn an income, you pay 39%. Goods in India are expensive because of high customs duties. And then on top of that, you get to one of the world's highest GST rates. Finally, you get to dividends. Dividend taxation in India is way out of line, is way out of line. The typical value seen in other EMs is like 10%, 15% is the taxation of dividends. So now I want to put this whole picture together and I want to tell the story from 2 points of view. The first point of view is the decision making of a investor that might like to do an investment in India. If you're going to build a business in India, all these things come into play and they damage the case for doing an investment in India. The customs duty interferes with raw material prices. The cesses are charged to a domestic producer and often create reverse protectionism against imported goods. The taxation at the level of a company, coupled with the taxation at the level of dividends, hampers the investment proposition as seen by an investor. Okay, so this is one box that we need to think about, that Indian and foreign investors have a choice about where they want to invest. Nobody should think that any firm in the world is obliged to invest in India. It's a business decision, and these calculations matter. Everybody makes this kind of spreadsheet. And intuitively, to justify an investment in India, then the wages have to be really low, and that hampers the ability of global firms or Indian firms to pay high salaries into India because something has to square to justify an investment. Also, we know that there have been great difficulties in investment in India for the last 10, 15 years. And this is one of the many elements where the policy frameworks are hostile to investment, and this has hampered investment into the country. But the other place that is equally important is to think about one individual. Consider an individual who might choose to live in India and earn an income in India. Look at all these pieces coming together. That person faces one of the world's highest peak personal income tax rates. On the investments, that person faces one of the world's highest dividend taxation rates. On all goods purchased, the person faces one of the world's highest GST rates and one of the highest customs rates. All this makes living in India less attractive. And this is unwise for the policymakers of the country. What we need to do in India is we need to attract individuals to live in India. We need to attract global companies to operate in India. We should not be complacent that this is going well. It is not, in fact, going well. We have had huge difficulties with investment for the last 10, 15 years. I also want to link to two associated pieces of the economics literature. The first is that even in a world of full compliance with laws, the distortion associated with a tax goes up in proportion to the tax rate squared. Okay, so if you go from 10% to 20%, the economic distortions go up not by 2x, but by 4x. So this is the uh, beautiful public finance knowledge in economics, which is a plea to keep rates low. Rates should be very, very low because that's what works well. It induces a lower distortion upon the economy. And the last thing that I want to say is the dark side of all this, which is evasion, that the people are not going to happily submit. The people are not docile enough to submit to this entire package of the world's highest tax rates. And that is why the tax GDP ratio in India is no great shakes. It isn't like the government is getting a whole lot of tax revenue through these very high tax rates. We have got all kinds of coercive practices in tax enforcement. We have raids and the lack of rule of law. We have tax officers demanding money out of people in ways that is frankly out of line. But that doesn't work because ultimately the people are tenacious and are and will reorganize their lives in ways that will evade taxes. And this includes doing less in India. So this is just not a wise platform to be. It is much better to be at tax rates that are way, way lower. So let me sketch the kind of numbers that all of us need to keep in mind. The normative sensible value for the GST rate is about 9%. We need a single rate GST of 9% on everything with complete tax pass through. The normative sensible peak personal income tax rate needs to be at about 20%. The tax rate applied to dividends needs to be about 10%. And finally, the sensible peak customs duty rate for the country needs to be about 5% so that the typical value will be about 2%. This is what sensible public finance guides us to.